SDPI, my felicitations for organizing yet again very enlightening sort of roundtable to discuss a very important subject. The climate agenda is so enormous and global that it requires inclusivity, it requires collaboration. And when we talk about public-private partnership, we're actually talking about that inclusivity and collaboration. It's not just the public sector or the private sector who has to work together, as rightly pointed out by the speakers earlier than myself, that it's the civil society from where this buy-in has to come through. And that is the starting point. In case of Pakistan, further complication is that it has to be different governments. So provincial governments as well as federal governments, all of them have to work together. So civil society, private sector, government and the different parts of the government, they all have to join hands and work together to meet the ambitious agenda that was earlier pointed out. I'm very glad that Dubai has been chosen for COP28. The other reasons or the transition from Paris to UAE has already been highlighted. But as far as I am concerned, GCC is probably the most liquid in terms of investment opportunities region available across the globe. Everybody is kind of squeezed as far as the funding is concerned. But GCC is one area which seems to be in a different zone altogether. And the funding there could be made available for this global larger agenda of climate change. In the recent times, we've seen that there has been a lot of interest from the GCC region for bankable projects in Pakistan. We've seen recently, it's at the verge of financial closure, is by the Kuwait Investment Authority, a water project in Sindh. So first of its kind project. There is wind and solar investment by the UAE government. The Denmark government also invested in it. I always talk about in our case, and I would like to expand that in the larger agenda of PPP as far as COP28 and its wider objective is concerned, is public sector risk with private sector delivery. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the public sector risk and private sector delivery which has to collaborate together to meet this very ambitious agenda. The aspect of delivery is, while it rests with the private sector, but on the government sector side, it's the regulatory environment which needs to be made more robust and driving different industries in the direction that we want them to go in. So for example, in UK, I think it's 2030, that the cars have to be either hybrid or full electric. Those kind of things are necessary on the regulatory front, which I think are missing, and perhaps COP28 can nail it down and make it into more concrete sort of steps for each country on what is required on the regulatory front, learning from the other country. On the other hand, the viability gap fund, the blended financing that we've been talking about, yes, the blended financing is the way to go, but blended financing also comes with a cost. So we need to keep in mind that the government's viability gap fund is something which is important as far as the PPP agenda is concerned for climate change. The element of additionality has to be debated and sorted out threadbare, and this is what I expect would happen in COP28. Very important for the banking industry. The operating framework has to be made so profitable and attractive for the private sector to participate in it. And then additionality could come through carbon offsets or carbon credit as they call it. Right now in Pakistan, for example, the amount is very small, but this is a big opportunity and we must capitalize on it going into the future. I was recently looking at some numbers, and the Timberland Fund by JP Morgan has committed $500 million. We have seen HSBC actually setting up trading desks to do this business, and I think the institution in Pakistan needs to do the same. The good news, Dr. Saab, is that State Bank of Pakistan has come out with the green financing framework, which has to be implemented in the next 3 years. And that framework not only requires the banks to be climately compliant, but they have to encourage and make sure that their customers follow the same guidelines. Um, to be honest, and the kind of quagmire that we are in right now on the external account side, the most promising, and I'm very happy that Zishan is also here because I know that he also talks about this. The most important thing for us to take care of our external financing funding requirement is rest in the climate financing. So while, Mushtaba Saab talked about the lack of bankable projects, but perhaps with the entities like IFC, World Bank and ourselves, we'll be happy to work together to make the projects more bankable and then go out and raise the funding to meet our external account challenges. Seems like the most promisable option available to us to meet our external requirements. I just want to share a couple of things with you. One is that, according to the World Bank, Pakistan has the potential to attract $100 billion of investments in climate compliant projects. So we need to figure out what those opportunities, how those opportunities have been dimensioned, and how the private sector can work with World Bank in making sure that we'll be able to harness that investment into Pakistan. And the banks will obviously play a major role. So 3 banks which have already listed themselves with the green fund commitment to Pakistan, and we would like more banks to come through in this as well. Lastly, I just want to highlight one fact that look, the role of private sector is there, but the public sector role in all those areas which are novel, which are relatively uncharted, the government has to go a step further and play a role there. In terms of providing actual funding as well. And in case of Pakistan, and I'm hoping that, in COP28, we'll be able to get some kind of commitment from the other donors also, and particularly from the cash-rich GCC, is on the startup and the venture capital. Just to share with you, I'm sure most of you would know that Tesla came into existence as a consequence of a venture capital set up by the government of the United States of America. So we need, and these are the success stories. I would also like the success stories to be presented at COP28 from these kind of projects and more bankable projects which has been done, for example, in Denmark and the rest of the world. And that would be an inspiration and source of, a template for the countries like ourselves to embark and achieve our targets for climate change. Thank you.